in color, the continuing story of Peyton Place. Starring Dorothy Malone as Constance Mackenzie, Ed Nelson as Michael Rossi, Ryan O'Neill as Rodney Harrington, Barbara Parkins as Betty Anderson, Tim O'Connor as Elliot Carson, Christopher Connolly as Norman Harrington, Patricia Morrow as Rita Harrington, James Douglas as Stephen Cord.
The Reverend Tom Winter is not in the habit of handing out cliches to those who are troubled enough to seek his advice. Tonight, Rita Harrington found this out. Rita knows, however, that the minister's comments about her relationship to the late Joe Chernak and to her husband Norman are true and honest, and she must deal with them. Those same comments, however, are themselves a mockery on the minister's life. A bitter mockery.
Next.
That was a private conversation. How much did you hear?
Nothing.
She confided in me.
Of course. Let's see, how does it go? There's nothing more precious than the love between a husband and wife. A marriage must be treasured and placed above all personal desires and needs. A marriage can survive anything but neglected love. If one partner rejects the other's love for whatever personal reasons, that love can die of neglect. Words to that effect. That is it, isn't it?
No, I didn't say that.
Well, that's the gist of it.
Something like that.
Did you also add, don't do as I do, do as I say? Is Rita Harrington a neglected wife?
Don't try to make any comparisons. Rita's problems are very different from ours.
Well, at least you found a sympathetic ear. The Reverend Mrs. Tom Winter can hardly take her basket of woes to another minister. So, to our precious love, which is slowly dying on the vine of neglect.
And being buried under a mountain of recriminations.
Touché. Wouldn't it shock Rita Harrington to know how you practice what you preach?
Susan, don't abuse your position as my wife. When people come to see me, they're entitled to privacy.
And I barged in and ruined your sermon. Next time I'll come through the kitchen window.
You better get dressed.
What is it tonight? A Boy Scout benefit, ladies auxiliary?
Well, you're going to have dinner at the inn with the other members of your Founders Festival Committee.
That's right. Anything to avoid being alone together for an evening.
Why don't you get dressed?
I'm not going.
What do I tell them?
Well, you can tell them anything you want. Even a poor excuse is better than having your wife disgrace you publicly by taking one drink too many.
See what you're driving me to? Just where in the heck have you been?
I went over to see Mr. Winter.
Good, or at least I hope it's good.
Did you ever hear of glasses?
Can I help it if I'm a born slob? Come on, don't hog my moo juice. Get your own glass.
All right. You know, Mr. Winter's a very direct guy. I mean, he looks right at you and tells you what he thinks.
Like what?
He sort of shook me up. He yells a little.
Why didn't you answer my question? What did he tell you?
Well, mostly just that we should love each other.
Well, I'll go along with that. What's that number?
I'm happy.
I'm glad. I mean, I'm very glad that you're happy. I guess I owe Mr. Winter a vote of thanks.
A big one. You know, I can see why ministers' wives might get jealous.
Huh?
They're sort of like doctors' wives. Think all the time their husbands spend with other people's problems and other people's wives.
Just a minute. You're not getting a crush on the minister, are you? Huh?
Nora, watch out the milk. Oh, no.
Godfrey Daniels.
I've got too big of a crush on my own husband. There's not any room for anybody else.
Well, let's just keep it that way. What do you say we go out and get a hamburger tonight?
I'd rather just loaf around the apartment. Maybe go to bed early.
That sounds like a beautiful evening. I didn't hear a thing.
Here.
Hello?
I got a real nowhere evening. I thought you and Rita might like to liven it up and come over and listen to some of my records.
I don't think so. Look, Rita's kind of tired. Maybe we can make it another evening.
Who is it?
It's Joe Rossi. He wants us to come over.
Tell him we will. Go ahead, tell him yes.
Joe, there's been a change in plans from the higher command. We'll be over.
Groovy.
Can I bring anything?
Oh, just you and your chick. I'll see you soon.
Okay. Well, no hamburgers. Unless you want to share them with the guy that usually ruins your appetite. What gives?
I'm trying to follow Mr. Winter's advice.
Yeah, he said that we should love each other. When did Joe Rossi get into the act?
Well, Mr. Winter also said that I should face my ghosts and not run away from them. It's all part of loving, you know, the right way.
Okay. Let's go.
Would you like to dance? Flaming dessert? Cappuccino? Anything? I'll get the check.
Not yet. In a couple of minutes, we'll be smack in the middle of reality again.
I think they're about ready to put the chairs on the table, whether we're in them or not.
Maybe we could lease his table with an option to buy. Build a fence around it, put a sign up, private property, keep out.
Sounds nice.
But unrealistic, I know.
You know, it's funny how people change. You were always the practical one, knee-deep in reality.
And you are always off in some cloud without a compass.
Well, maybe we can meet each other halfway this time.
Well, it's just...
It's just what?
Everything's been so perfect tonight, I'm afraid to let go.
Because it's so seldom that way with us.
Well, every time it does happen, we're always alone off in some private corner, the two of us. No one to elbow their way in to spoil it.
We don't need a fence to keep us in or other people out. Oh, Betty, we have been through so much. We've just got to hold on to each other and keep going. We can't turn back. And maybe it's worth it if we've learned something, huh?
I know I've learned one thing. I love you.
Well, then you get 100% on the course. And here's your diploma.
In a public place.
You're right. Let's get out of here.
I'll, be getting another diploma in a couple of days. Mr. Wainwright stopped by the inn tonight. The final papers are ready. In a couple of days, I'll be the ex-Mrs. Stephen Cord. Plus the ex-Mrs. Rodney Harrington.
Why didn't you tell me sooner?
I just wanted to see what it would feel like not to discuss or analyze anything for one night.
How was it?
I told you. Perfect.
And that's the way it's going to stay. From now on. To the future Mrs. Rodney Harrington.
I'll drink to that. Sure you won't join me?
No, thank you.
Well, I guess it's only fitting that a man should drink to his divorce alone. Oh, I forgot. You never touch it when you're on duty.
It's a courtesy, Stephen. I'm Mrs. Cord's attorney. Just thought you'd like to know.
Oh, well then, to your courtesy, Mr. Wainwright. Now, let's see, what else can we drink to? Oh, sure. We'll drink to my grandfather, to his courtesy. Sure, for getting you to scurry right on down here with the good news.
I'd like to think it's the alcohol that makes you so rude, Stephen.
Don't just drop the bomb and run. Stick around, wait for the explosion.
Good night.
What's the matter, John? You're not wearing the old man's victory very well. You feel a little uncomfortable being the bombardier?
It's a routine matter as far as I'm concerned.
You know, that's the one thing lacking in you. No imagination. You know, a lawyer without imagination is like peanuts without salt, pro without con, Betty without Rodney. You know, can't you see what that old man's accomplished? In one big, fat, masterful stroke, he has continued his dynasty, and he's paid me back for being his daughter's, what's the term? Love child. Yeah, love. Only there wasn't much love involved.
This isn't necessary.
Oh, look, am I embarrassing you? No, this is common knowledge. Very common.
Well, I'm sorry that I can't...
Oh, no, don't be. No, I'm out of it. No, throw a little sympathy Rod and Betty's way. You see, they're dancing on the end of Grandfather's string now. And for a dying old man, he just never gets tired of watching his puppets perform.
Now, Mr. Peyton may have desired your separation from Mrs. Cord, but he did not manipulate it.
And I wonder how that happened. You know, we were all so civilized. Rod and Betty and me. Yeah, and then we found out the provisions of Grandfather's will that Betty got all the marbles if and when she was married to Rodney. You know, that was a beautifully warped piece of work, by the way. And we were all determined to resist it. But it still happened. How?
I think you can answer that.
Well, now. Thanks for the special trip down here, John. I appreciate your service.
Well, there's nothing special, Stephen. There were other matters that needed my attention.
Such as?
Well, I'm not at liberty to say.
Well, Bill, Harrington, what?
Mr. Peyton's interests. Good night.
Mr. Peyton's interests.